Starting recording. All right, Boogaflu ball macro overview. We're going to go over the objective of the main ball: positioning, zoning, crashing, spreading, balling, hot versus cold spots, and general tips. Once again, if there are any questions while we go through, just let me know. The objective of the main ball is to control point tick. You don't win wars unless you control point tick. Controlling point tick is primarily done by placing more players on point than the enemy. I know that sounds really stupid, but it is the truth. You have more people on flag, you spin flag, you win. You can alter this balance by securing kills / not dying. The most efficient way to secure kills is by coordinating damage. These are very basic things, but more in depth, we're going to go over how you do these certain things better. Positioning. The quads have to think is that they are point players, but they control a much smaller zone of the point. Okay, so this is a big transition from what we used to do for a very long time. You know, the old macro was that you push point team to top quads go in their road, and then bottom groups step into point. That is no longer. You are now a point member if you are in a quad. You are just playing a certain section of the point. If you are a top quad, you shouldn't be extending 20 meters into their road. If you're a bottom quad, you still need to play your zone like you would play any other zone. It doesn't mean you're perma pushing up or playing bottom, okay? The point team is a rotating element of the main ball. Oh, that's Frank. He's getting active. They are the ones that set up plays. So the point team is going to be constantly rotating around the point. They're going to be looking at to set up plays for the rest of the main ball. That is their primary objective. Again, the point team's old objective used to be to constantly spin the flag, but that should be everybody's objective. Hang on, give me 1 second. Right. Thank you. The only time you should be stepping off of point is in an emergency to stay alive or to quickly zone a healer or a fire staff or any other player that is playing too close to your quad. So you should be... Yo, Wiki. Can we edit that out? Thank you. The only time you should be stepping off a point is in an emergency to stay alive or to quickly zone a healer playing too close. So yeah, there's a lot of dots on a point here. That looks relatively ugly. I know, just the light greens are sacreds. Our sacred should be mostly on point, only slightly off point. And then as you can see, we have our top right quad, top left quad, bottom left quad, bottom right quad, playing almost always on point, unless we'll go over some specific instances where you have to get off. But for the most part, you should be always playing on point. Zoning. The purpose of zoning is to fight for control of your quad. Do not extend 20 meters off point. We have seen this a lot in VODs. It's not like you guys are doing anything wrong. It's just old meta, in my opinion. If you're dogging down someone that's really low, sure, you can extend off of point, right? If you're going to secure that kill. But don't spend all of your time off of point 15 meters out into their road. It's a waste of time. You should be focusing on the point spin. The tighter you zone, the more damage you output and take. This is big here. That equals more alt charge, which means better crashes. So, quad players, you're a part of the point team. You're primarily in charge of following up on crashes and playing your quad. The tighter that you play to your quad inside of point and in a sacred and against enemies with friendlies, you output more damage and you input more damage, which means your ultimate charges faster, which means you crash. As a main ball, you crash harder because you have more deados. You should be playing mostly on point. Only leave one in a bad spot. Sacred should be mostly on point and slightly off. Crashing. This is a big one. If you look at the top right here, this is one of our crashes from our war last night. We are crashing these 3 guys in the bottom, and our entire army is coming from one direction. And I shouldn't have to tell you guys why that's a problem, but I'm going to. All right, so if our entire army comes from this one direction, the guy that's in front, that's crashing from where he probably should be crashing from, when he turns around, he's getting body blocked by a bunch of fucking blues. So we're going to go over how we want you guys to crash from here on out. And it's actually pretty simple. It just takes a little bit of thought process. So the purpose of crashing is to secure kills. You should be crashing the clump from the direction that your quad is positioned, and you should be looking to engulf the enemy by body blocking them. Okay, so when you dogpile, you're looking to surround the enemy and prevent them from leaving with your body. The reason why we lose a lot of crashes is because our bruisers are not dogpiling properly. As soon as the countdown comes, this is what you should be thinking of. How am I approaching this crash? So for example, if Looper is calling, all right, I want you to look top left. We're looking top left in 3. As soon as you hear the 3 bruisers, you should be looking top left. As soon as he says the 2, you should be positioning yourself at an angle that your quad is supposed to be approaching the crash from to properly surround the clump. And then on 1, you should be popping cleanse and looking to get active. All right. How you efficiently engulf, you body block enemies, prevent friendly body block. It's pretty straightforward. And as a general rule of thumb, this is also another thing that we're doing very improperly. If we're taking the initial crash, you don't stay in a clump. Okay. So if we are not recrashing, you don't stay because you can expect the recrash and you are going to be out of cleanse with no cooldowns. So if you're taking initial, it's very smack and go. It's like 1 pick for the army, 2 picks for the army, and you get the fuck out. If you're taking the recrash and you win, that's when you ball up and you start to look to stay in the ball and dog down players. So again, general rule of thumb, if you're taking initial crash, hit and run. If you're taking a recrash, you can stay in longer and you want to stay in longer to secure more kills. Okay. That's why we're always looking to recrash because it's in our advantage. And at the top of the screen here, you've kind of got a picture. You got our bot right quad, bottom left quad, top right quad, and our top left quad. And this is how you should be approaching this crash, right? Point team's going to be coming typically from center of point. It's really important for this bottom right quad not to body block them too hard. And then if you are on the sides of the crash, you really want to push yourself to get to this side of the crash. So you're not just all funneling into this one spot. Because if we all funnel into this one spot, we get recrash and it hurts a lot more. So again, some VODs that I watch of players doing this, they already know to be doing it, but some I watch and you guys have no idea how you should be approaching the clump. This is very straightforward. It just takes a little bit more thought process as soon as you hear the countdown. Okay, so again, you surround the clump. You're approaching from your quad. If your quad is top right, you should be looking to hit the top right side of the quad or the clump. If your quad is bottom left, you should be looking to hit the bottom left side of the clump. And this reigns true for anywhere the clump is at. It's still the same. You just want to put yourself in the same position of the clump that your quad is assigned. Okay. Spreading. When taking the initial crash, you must spread quickly. The best way to avoid getting body block is to spread towards your quad. So, your quad is your home. When you have to leave your home, you should be looking to return back to your home in the same direction that you approached it. That is likely going to be the safest route. This does not mean leave the point. So when the caller says spread, he is not necessarily telling you to get off the point. Again, spreading and getting off the point are 2 different calls. So if I'm not saying or Looper's not saying get off the point, unless you have to, you shouldn't be getting off the point. You still need to play on the point. And then again, down here is a little visual example of how you should be looking to spread. Our bottom left quads are looking to get back to the bottom left quad. Our point group's looking to get to somewhere center around point. Our bottom right quad looking to get to bottom right. Our top right quad looking to get top right. And the reason why that's good is because we're not just moving through as a big army that's easy to recrash. And you guys have seen this, right? When you do recrashes, you've seen like a big giant ball of players that's moving because they're trying to spread. And then you recrash where the ball is of players is going. You can prevent that by spreading properly. Balling and dogging. If you hard win a crash, you should be dogging down targets, and this shouldn't always be on the caller to decide whether or not you're dogging. It should be in your guys' mental. So if you hard win a crash and it's very big and fun and it looks pretty when you kill a bunch of people, you should look to translate that into like just staying on point in a big giant ball and just fucking everybody up that comes in your way. The more blues on 1 red, the better. The faster that we dogpile on individual targets, the faster they die, the faster that we can move on to the next one. Point team should always be dogging to force enemy crashes. So point team, I don't really have to tell you this. You guys understand this, but realistically, the point team should always be moving kind of in a unit as a ball to kind of try and bait out crashes and also secure kills just for free point tick. And then on all-ins, the entire army should be balling, dogging specific areas unless told otherwise. This is mostly on the caller. If I'm saying all in, bottom left, bottom left, bottom left, as soon as I say all in, I am then going to transition, the caller is then going to transition into a positional call where he wants you to focus all of your damage at. You've seen like really weak all-ins. Some of you guys have been in our war, like our last defense. The all-in was really weak because it was really spread out. Just pick a spot. The caller is going to pick a spot and you just ball up and stick on it and try to get as many kills as possible. Lastly, we got hot versus cold spots. The enemy point team is usually the hottest spot on the point. You should not be getting caught in hot spots. So earlier when I said like quads should always be playing on point, realistically, the only time you shouldn't be playing on point is you're about to die or your quad is flooded with the enemy point team. So I'm looking at my bottom right quad in specifically. A lot of times the enemy is going to play top left. To us, that's bottom right. And that means the bottom right quad can't just sit inside of the enemy point team. Usually it forces them off. It's okay, but the rest of the quads need to be stepping to kind of, you know, counteract that the force that is pushing us off. The coldest spot is usually the quad that's directly opposite of the enemy point team. So if you are top left when the enemy point team is bottom right, then you should be playing for relatively free. That happens a lot, other than the kill squad pressure, obvious. And very in layman's terms, the hotter the spot that you're in, the more damage you take. The colder the spot, the less damage you take. All right, it's pretty straightforward. But just remember that when you're in a hot spot, if you can't handle the damage, you need to get out. General tips. We should be looking to play aggressively and listen to the caller. A lot of the VODs, especially from the melees that I've been watching lately, you guys are really slow at the beginning of the war. A lot of wars are decided in the first 5 minutes. Like, I'll tell you guys straight up. If you get like a big aggressive opening against the enemy and knock the wind out of them quickly, like a B50-50, for example, and you win that 50-50, it is going to snowball through the rest of the war. It's going to feel worse for the enemy when they're just losing. So at the beginning of the war, for every single player, you should be looking to like fucking open your eyes a little bit more. I know it's kind of ironic coming from me because and maybe I shouldn't say that's kind of racist, but open your eyes a little bit more, take a deep breath, wake up, and start playing your best game right at the beginning of the war. And again, when a three count starts, you should be snapping camera to pre-call spot. So for example, top left in 3, all of you should be looking at the call spot. Top left in 2, you should be looking, finding yourself a good approach. So instantly moving to zone yourself around the ball so you're not just jumping into it. And then at 1, you should be popping cleanse and looking to crash. All right. And that's pretty much it. If there's any main ball players that have any sort of input, just let me know. But some things that were on the slide or not on the slide that I wanted to go over is that 1, you can't crash spots that we don't have outside control. So kill squad, this is very, very related to you. If we don't have top left control with Oppo, it makes the crash very weak. So typically you shouldn't be looking for a crash on a spot that you don't have quad control. And then what are some other things that I talked about? Oh yeah, point team quit inting in before the rest of the army. It's been happening quite a bit. So don't do that. Vadim, you have any tips, tricks, comments? Yeah, that's a good point. Some of our recrashes have been a little slow, and the slower the recrash, the weaker it is. So if you see it happening, don't be afraid to jump into it. Like, oh, how about now? Am I good now? Oh, nice, Wiki. Um, yeah, yeah. As you guys approach a recrash, like Gurge and I, and this is no offense to Looper, he just needs more experience. And Hey Crew as well, and Bobby, who are all 3 callers that are in this company. They just need more experience. But Gurge and I can typically see when a recrash is coming, so we kind of pre-call the recrash, and we're earlier to it. But even still, like if you see an opportunity for a recrash, and the caller doesn't, you should be looking for it, and you should be looking to jump into it because he's probably going to say this. And Vadim, you actually bring up a really good point. Some of the best players, and I'm an avid VOD watcher. I watch tons of VODs all the fucking time. I watch them when I'm at work, watch them when I'm at lunch, watch them before I go to bed. I'm kind of sick in the head. But one thing that I've noticed consistently with good players is that they often see things happening 1 to 2 or 3 seconds before the caller sees them. So if you see them, act upon it, right? If you know something should be happening like a recrash, act upon it because the caller is looking at everything, which is why he's a little bit later to what you're already seeing happen. Yeah, and that's good advice. And then the big thing, like if you guys were in the Horizon War when we attacked, and it felt like they just had more point players. That's because they did, because their quads were playing in point, and we were not. So we got to play tighter to point. We got to play in point, and we have to understand that when we are winning, we should be balling up, because that's why it felt like we were getting dogged down, is because they were winning recrashes, and when they did that, they just stuck in the clump and they just killed anything that came into their path. That'll always happen. That's just good macro by them. So we need to practice the same things so that we are preparing to be on even field with them. And again, I don't think there's a situation that our main ball gets beat flat out because of skill. I actually think in this meta that skill matters less. It's more so about how you play and understand the macro and play for the team. I know that kind of sucks, but it's the fucking truth. So, yes. Thank you all for watching. 15 minutes, dude. I'm getting faster and faster.